welcome everybody to another episode of Women Like Us. I'm honored to be your host and moderator for today's discussion. On the agenda for today is going to be around authoring your own book and how to maneuver yourselves between the procrastinating, the competition for your time, and all the different logistics that take place around your life and around the industry of authoring a book. I have with me two wonderful ladies here who I will yield the floor to introduce themselves. And then following that, we'll jump right into the content, if that's good with you. Sarah, why don't we start with you?
Not only am I in tech sales and have been doing that, but also writing a book on the exact same topic. So happy to share my experience here.
Perfect. Thank you. Suzanne?
My name is Suzanne, and I am a health and nutrition coach. I own a business that deals with lots of exercise, fitness, health, and nutrition. I've been fortunate to write a book, a recipe book or two. Hopefully, I can give the perspective of when something has to be done and how I went about doing that.
We'll start right off, right? Lots of people, even in passing, will say, I should write a book. They'll be in mid-sentence often in a particular scenario, a life experience, and say, I should write a book. But oftentimes I think they don't get past the title or the idea. So beyond the title and idea, Suzanne, let me pose this to you. How do you organize the content? How do you develop the content? What are the 5 recommendations you would have for a potential author on organizing themselves?
You hit it on the head, Lisa, that it's so daunting. Like, where do you begin? You think, okay, I've got this idea. Where do I actually, how do I whiteboard that? Where do I start? So for me, with everything I do, it's pretty much, the old simple thing of KISS, keep it simple, silly. So is exactly that. Really prepare. I always say prepare. Keep it simple. Plan what you want to do. So number 1, prepare. What's the purpose of why you want to do this? The second thing is, for me, is looking at who my audience actually is. So when I went to do this recipe book, it kind of grew organically. I run lots of health and fitness challenges, and what came out of that is who my audience was. They were asking for, to put the recipes together that they'd come up with over years. And my audience was people who needed recipes to make their lives easier on their health challenge. Mm-hmm. So I really focused on what they needed. I think for number 3 for me is really knowing who my audience was, is really taking their feedback on board and really looking at what they wanted. Not what I wanted. I wanted to tell them, is more what they needed, what they wanted. And I suppose that's different on what kind of book you're writing. For me, it was, strategically for recipes and for a purpose, where it'd be different from a novel, I guess, where you're telling a story. But for the purpose of a recipe book, for example, or a cookbook, there was a distinct purpose, and I needed to take on what people wanted. So what we did there is we looked at what, we did no sugar recipes, or recipes for sleep, or, looking at what the actual topic was and develop that recipe book around that. Let's get down and dirty. Proofreading a lot.
Okay.
You don't want to miss an ingredient. You want to have consistent wording. If you're using an acronym, spell it out at the beginning. So it's all those little things that can confuse people. And big one, when you finally know who you're preparing, who your audience is, your intention, taking feedback and what people want, really, you need to proofread and get that right, or you're not only your reputation is in tatters, but people don't want to see that unprofessionalism. They want to see something that is well constructed, well put together. And I assure you, no matter how many times you proofread, get someone else to look at it, and then get someone else to look at it, and then get someone else to look at it. I don't know if you can relate to that. And
yes,
yeah, the amount of times I've missed ingredients.
Laughed at that because I thought about how tedious that is as well. especially how long your book is or how much the content you've been writing, and then you have to read it over and over and over.
Number 5 for me, to round it off, I guess, is for me, with I can go on what I know is with the recipe book or cookbook, is to have a really great table of contents and structure it well. It's nothing worse, I think, to the learnings I've made is having a table of contents with something like a if you're doing, saying how to do something or preparing a flower bed or doing a recipe book or whatever, have great structure in your table of contents. No one wants to know something, well, I don't think, go to chapter 9 when it should be in chapter 2. Or
it's like having dinner
like,
first before you have breakfast, just to align with the idea of the recipe, right?
A recipe book by categorizing it by chicken or fish or gluten-free, or really have a good structure. Make it easy for people right off the get-go.
On the table of content and the content, what do you do first? Do you do the table of content first, or do you write the book first?
Well, that's a great question. It
Great
brings
question.
us back to number 1 tip, doesn't it? It's
Prepare.
about prepare.
Got it.
I'm a big whiteboarder, and I love to set my ideas out with the storyboard. And storyboarding is great for me, and I can really look at where things fit. And no matter what program you use, people say, oh, I don't know what to use with the program. How I'm going to what I'm going to use technology wise. Who cares first? Let's look at the storyboard and structuring it properly. Great question. My table of contents always comes at the end, because I look at how does it all now fit together. I color coded my pages the last time. The structure takes on a mind of its own once you see how it works together, and having that really intention of purpose, who you're targeting your audience to, proofread, structure it together, piece it together, and it will happen. And if you think you don't have time,
which is my problem,
keeping it simple, for me is the key. And thinking, okay, wonder what my purpose is. And then it might grow organically for you, and you'll find that time just does come.
Sarah, you've had your own journey with writing a book, and I'd love to know from your standpoint, what are some of the things you're learning on the content and organization of content when you took your journey?
I also took the preparation route because I thought, well, how am I going to keep going and not veer off and stop writing? And I thought, oh, well, let me find out what tools are out there to help authors write. And so I researched and downloaded a few authors' tools. I think it was Scribbly, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. That Lisa has that built-in structure from a chapter perspective. You can have the outline, you can have the storyboard, and then you have the text underneath. And it allows you, depending on your personality type and the way that you like to write, to follow that type of formula. So I bought it. I was so excited about it, and I never used it.
Oh,
interesting.
really? I was getting so excited to hear it.
I know. I never used it. And I learned about myself. I did not like that structure.
Okay.
I took the approach of, when I feel inspired to write, I'm just going to write. Forget the structure. I'll deal with that later. And so I think every single person is different. Your writing style is going to be different. My writing style is going to be different than yours, Lisa, and yours, Suzanne. Depending on the type of book you're writing, you are going to have a different style, whether it's a novel, whether it's a recipe book. Like that's a whole other beast, I feel. Nonfiction, a children's book.
Yeah.
I think that depending on what your content and your subject is and who you are as a person, you're going to find your own way. But my biggest piece of advice for writers is just to write. And if you get bogged down into the structure, and if you make that as your driving force, you're not going to do it, because it's not about the structure at the beginning. It's about what you're writing about. So if you just decide to, Lisa, for example, I'm going to use you because you say you have no time. If you write for 30 minutes a day for a year, you have your book. 30
Wow.
minutes. It's like going to the gym. An hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Suzanne, you're in the nutrition space. Absolutely. If you just do that 30 minutes, you would be shocked at what you can accomplish.
So you're saying get started.
Just
Don't-
write.
Just write. Just get started.
And it goes back to exactly what Suzanne said. Keep it simple. Keeping
Right.
it simple is literally just typing or writing.
Right.
Forget
No pun
all the
intended.
other noise, because it's just noise.
Just, purposeful what we're doing here today,
Mhm.
but also probably get inspired by the process of some of your favorite authors. Might be another good tip for some of our viewers out there that are interested in taking up the role of author.
That is part of one of my logistics tips, is educate yourself on what, depending on your genre, what is the best approach for you? What are others doing? Don't try to reinvent the wheel. There are millions of books at all the bookstores. We watched, and I say we, my husband and I are writing this book together. We watched Malcolm Gladwell's masterclass, and then the author of the Da Vinci Code, I forget, Adam, to learn from them. They talk to you about their process. And Gladwell is nonfiction. Adam, I got to get his name. He's fiction, but it's historical fiction. So there's a lot of research involved, and also character development and understanding what's involved in that process as well. So that is part of one of my logistics tips, is educate yourself.
The next topic. One of the things that I think is probably the most unknown part of writing is the collaboration and the publishing part. That's the other part of the logistics that I think is so daunting. So Sarah, if we start with you, like, what was that process like? How do you begin to tackle getting the actual paper and book out the door?
It is so easy to self-publish now.
Oh,
that's very cheap, cost effective. Amazon offers, you can put your book on Amazon and get paid by them, no problem. Get customers. There are printing services for you. You don't have to go down the traditional agent and then publisher route if you don't want to, or if it's not part of your outcome. The question you as the author, and what we asked ourselves was, what do we want to do with this book? What is this being used for? What is our outcome? Is it a tool? Are we trying to sell other products or services? Are we looking to build a name for ourselves as writers? Do I want to go into writing as my full time? I think, do I have an amazing idea that I just need to get out there? So I think once you define your outcome and what you want, that will also define the route that you go for as it relates to publishing and going down that process. That we wanted to not go the self-publishing route, that we wanted to go down the traditional publishing route. It's a challenging route, but it can be fruitful depending on what your topic is, what your genre is, and if there is a market for it. The way that the approach that we took was, we got a book coach, which kind of doubled as an accountability partner, which just kept us on track, helped us with that structure piece. And as well, given that we were in the nonfiction genre, there's a structured process for submitting to book publishers that we had to follow.
okay.
That included, so for example, you have to do a book proposal. This is different for fiction, just so you know, and likely different for recipe books. Now, you don't have to write to the entire book, but you have to have a table of contents.
Wow.
And you have to have 1 to 2 sample chapters written as part of the book proposal. You also need a marketing plan that includes a competitive analysis, as well as a bio on yourself and a summary of the book. So a literary agent will help you with that format. They will also help you edit, and because that, again, the proofreading and the editing is so key. but that will also inform your approach to how you write the book. Because
Wow.
if you're not self-publishing and you're going down that route, you don't need a completed book. For novels, you need a completed manuscript. Again, that's a different process and a different approach. But again, if you want to have a New York Times bestseller and do it that way, totally fine, totally cool. There are tons also of people and companies that will assist you with that process, essentially. So we worked with her to put together that book proposal. I think it was maybe 10 pages total, 10, 11 pages. And she shepherded all of that for us and helped us with that structure and the proper content, making sure it read well, and then shopping it to publishers.
Interesting. So the tip then is to decide what your end goal is.
Yes.
And that end goal might in fact provide a path, a roadmap as to whether or not you go down the traditional publishing versus the self-publishing route.
So again, if your business is launching and you need to establish yourself as a thought leader and you know that a book is going to help you with your business, it's probably best to self-publish, get it done really, really fast, not have to wait. And especially if you have the book done,
yeah,
get it out there.
Right.
My audience was the people who are doing our health challenges. So primarily, and then other people get on the bandwagon and want to buy it afterwards or whatever. But that was the purpose. So I have to do it pretty quickly. So self-publish was, I'm really interested to see everything that you've done, Sarah. That's so interesting. But for me, that was I had to do it quite quickly. So yeah, that's electronically. People do want to be able to have that electronically. They do want it fast as well. So that suited my purpose as well. It's taken a few goes with this recipe book. I've done a few of them, and they're continuously getting better. Yeah, and it was the purpose. When you're talking about what's the purpose, what outcome do you want? And one of them that I did was I had a friend who sadly lost her life to cancer, and I wanted to have sell it online, and all funds, all profits go towards breast cancer. That was my purpose.
Wow,
I love that.
So, as I got to get it out to different people that would never have seen it before because they bought it for that purpose.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was a different way of getting that content out to people who would never normally have seen that book before, because they wanted to give for breast cancer research. So they bought the book. So there's different ways to get it out there, isn't there? But I think you have to be real with what you're doing.
Self-publishing, you're doing it, you own it, it's all yours. You own the cost of that. Any money you make is your money. Beautiful, right?
Okay.
You pay a fee to Amazon or not if you're not doing the online thing, no problem at all. When you go down the publishing route, you're now getting into a contract with a book publisher who is going to front money. If you're lucky enough to get an advance, that's great. Good for you. I hope you get hundreds of thousands of dollars. But that money has to be paid back in some way because the publisher is making an investment in you to publish your content, which costs them money. And so what people need to be aware of if they go down the traditional route is oftentimes the publisher is not going to give you marketing help. So you need to be prepared to market your book, sell your book, get the word out, go and do a speaker circuit, build a platform online, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, because you need an audience that is going to pay for the book so the publisher can make their money back, and then you'll get some other sort of, not as much money, but you'll still get paid, if you will, through the contract.
Wow.
So if you're not prepared to do that, and you don't have financial backing, or you're not willing to invest in yourself, or you don't have a platform, or you don't want to build a platform because it's too hard, I get it. It's been my big struggle. Just be aware that the publisher is likely not going to help you, and they may not sign you. They want people with financial backing. They want people who have a platform, have a built-in audience, so
I
that
see.
they can get their money back because they're making an investment in you, essentially. To do that, you need to build an audience. So then it becomes a marketing and a sales game. And if you're not prepared to do that work, even after you've poured your heart out into a book, which takes a whole lot of time and energy and effort,
Compassion.
and all of that into one, like
Yeah.
you have to be prepared and committed to work on your book, promote and sell your book for years.
Okay. So the question is, this question is, what are the top 3 books you would recommend as must reads for the target audience of this channel?
I think books are very, very personal. I'll tell you some of the books that I'm reading. I think I go to the bookstore probably once a month and buy like 3 new books. And then, but I never finish them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's that time thing. Yeah.
So the last 3 books that I bought are actually all in the film and all about film and television.
Okay.
So that's a very specific. I bought 3 books. It's there. I was reading one today. It's amazing. Before that, this was probably maybe 3 weeks ago. I bought a book called Ego. The Ego is the Enemy. And it's all about the ego and getting out of your own way. I also bought a book called Machiavelli for Women.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
It's a book about how to use Machiavellian tactics from a woman's perspective. It's okay. I don't know if I would.
It's okay.
It's okay. I think for me, I'm looking for something a little bit different. It's called Invisible Women.
Okay.
And it's about how women get lost in the workforce, in the funnel, in the pipeline, financially, compensation, that type of thing. It's a very data heavy book. It's not one that's meant to be read from start to finish. It's more of like pick a chapter kind of thing.
Sure.
And then here's another book that I have here, The Art of Thinking Clearly. I kind of like the title. It's all about, or the way that they wrote it. It's all about, how to think, all of the biases, how we convince ourselves that we're right all the time, and try to help us poke holes in our own thinking to become better thinkers.
Better thinkers.
So I'm more of, I love the psychology side of reading. I always try to learn more and just better myself, kind of thing.
I wish I had time to read. I love audiobooks, but I'm reading that because I don't know if you know Michael Mosley, but if you don't, you need to.
Okay.
Because he will get your whole health sorted out. And then Elizabeth Gilbert came over to Australia, and I was lucky to see her, and who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, right? And she put out this book. Have you read this book?
No.
I haven't read that book, but I've read Eat, Pray, Love.
Yes. So I'm going to read this book.
I'm going to maybe just ask you both to take a minute and just talk about your books. Suzanne, you've written, I think you said 3 cookbooks or recipe books. So, let's call it a plug for the books. If you guys don't mind, just spending a minute or 2 talking about your books. And then
this book is all about our Cooly Healthy Body Challenge. And really what it's about is that it goes on a theme. So every year I do one, and it's a theme of what we're working on for that year. The year before, we really worked on, the Mediterranean diet and sleep and how that works with that. This year, it was all about, getting sugar out of our lives and refined sugars and really working on those great meals and putting it together. So, it's all color coded, so with depending chicken's orange.
Okay, got it.
Green is, starters.
And is this your most recent book, Suzanne?
This is my most recent, but we are working on another one from last year's challenge. So as I said before, it's really about, for me, it was about looking at who your audience is and understanding what they want. So for the one I'm working on now from last year's challenge is looking at all the new recipes that came out of that. So they want to see that. So they're going to buy it again, or they're going to want it again because they want to see their recipe in the book. So it's a conglomeration of
Wow.
14 challenges of recipes. And it's really created a community and a group that, people saying, wow, my recipe that I contributed is in there as well. And so that's, I think, from where I am, obviously it's nonfiction, it's a recipe book, but it takes on that community feel about incorporating recipes from our challenges that they've done.
So the book to be is tentatively named Advantage Women.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, part of the publishing process traditionally is that sometimes the author does not get to name their book. So
Fair enough. So it might
Right.
change.
P.S. It may change. The premise of the book, it's nonfiction. It's essentially the marriage of literally my corporate sales experience as being a woman in tech sales for the last 20 years, and my husband, who is a hypnotist, and the parallels that exist between the two. And it's really a how-to guide for women who either want to get into sales or who are curious about the techniques that can be used, and a shared experience for women like me who have been in the industry for a really long time and who have been through the trenches and been through some of the experiences that I've had, and just a shared community, to your point, Suzanne, about who is the audience. The audience are women like me, women like my colleagues that really are on our own often in the sales game. So it's a bit of how-to with a bit of sharing experience, and hopefully people can learn about how great the sales profession is.
With that, I'd like to thank you ladies very much for your time. Very interesting topic. I learned lots, including lots of lessons about my table of contents, preparing and just getting started. Thank you again. I wish you all the best, and Suzanne, quick recovery.
Thank you.